has had a budget stabilization account since 2004. This is our rainy day fund. The rules say to put money in savings when times are good, the economy is strong, and tax revenues are healthy, while drawing it out to pay the bills when the economy is weaker and tax revenues are lower. Current law requires about 3% of the general fund, so currently about $3 billion, to be added to the rainy day fund every year until it reaches $8 billion. The governor can reduce or eliminate the amount added to savings, though. California is adding to the rainy day fund this year, but before that it was actually empty for several years as a result of the recession that began in 2007. Money is released for use by a vote of the legislature. Proposition 2 would change the rules about how much money goes into the account and when money can be taken out. If Proposition 2 passes, the minimum amount to put in savings will go from 3% to 0.75% of the general fund, plus some capital gains tax revenues when they are high. In dollars, the amount paid in could range from $800 million to $2 billion or more. An equal amount would have to be paid toward the state's long-term debts to local governments or health or pension funds each year for 15 years, after which those debt reduction payments could continue or could go into savings instead. But although Proposition 2 would lower the minimum amount to go into savings, it would make it harder to avoid putting money in. The state could only reduce payments if the governor declared a budget emergency and the legislature agreed. Withdrawing funds would also require a budget emergency. The amount taken out could only be enough to cover the budget emergency or half the fund, whichever is smaller, in the first year of any emergency. The new target size for the rainy day fund would be 10% of the general fund, which would currently make it $11 billion. When the fund is full, money that would be required to go into savings could instead be spent on infrastructure. One thing that's causing some argument is that under certain conditions, when revenues are high, money would go into a new state reserve fund for schools and community colleges. This wouldn't change the amount of money the state spends on education, but it would smooth out the variation from year to year. And in the year after any money goes into the Education Reserve Fund, school district local reserves would be capped at between 3% and 10% of their annual budget, depending on their size. State education officials could exempt school districts from this requirement if the districts face extraordinary fiscal circumstances. This part of the law, the cap on local school district reserves, would not be in the Constitution and could be changed in the future by a vote of the legislature.
The legislature put this measure on the ballot. Supporters include Governor Brown, the California Chamber of Commerce, and the State Board of Education. They say that Proposition 2 will stabilize the state's budget by ensuring temporary revenues are set aside and not committed to ongoing spending, that it will accelerate the state's debt payment and create an education fund to avoid future cuts to schools. Opposition arguments are signed by Educate Our State, a parent group. They say that Proposition 2 will allow the state to continue paying school districts late and even move money from education into the general fund. School districts will be less able to compensate for late payments from the state.